Welcome back, deep divers. Ready for another plunge into the crypto abyss? Today, we're tackling Qubic and their, well, let's just say, unconventional tokenomics.
Unconventional is putting it mildly.
Right. We've got a stack of white papers, some spicy forum debates, and even a few articles all wrestling with the same question. Can Qubic really pull off a deflationary crypto that's built for the long haul?
It's a big question for sure. I mean, most crypto projects, they're all about slow and steady emissions reduction, right?
Yeah, the slow drip.
But Qubic, they're taking a totally different approach. It's all about strategic burning, these halving events, and then there's this thing called the supply watcher. They're not just going for scarcity, they're aiming for, total control.
Okay, so let's break it down for our listeners.
Yeah.
Qubic uses these things called epochs.
Yeah, their time measurement system.
Think of it like Quebic's internal clock. Each epoch is about a week long.
Gives you a sense of their time scale, you know?
Exactly. Now, the big news is they just slashed their max supply.
Huh.
Decimated it.
Really? How much?
80% down. From a quadrillion QUBIC.
A quadrillion.
That's a big number.
Yeah.
Down to 200 trillion.
Still a lot, but...
Still massive, but way smaller.
Yeah.
And get this, over half of that new, smaller supply is already out there, circulating.
Wow, that's a bold move right out of the gate. Definitely sets them apart.
It does.
Yeah.
And it has a direct impact on their fully diluted valuation, the FDV.
Right, the FDV. With the old max supply, it was hovering around $1.7 billion.
A lot of zeros.
This cut, it brings it down to about $340 million. To give you some context, name a comparable crypto project. You know that one?
Sure, yeah.
They had a similar FDV at launch, and that really fueled their early growth. So Qubic, they're positioning themselves very strategically.
They're playing chess, not checkers. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting.
More interesting.
Qubic, they're still emitting a trillion QUBIC every week.
Okay, I'm listing.
But a big chunk of those new coins, they're getting burned. Gone. Poof.
Permanently removed from the supply. They're actually doing it.
Oh, yeah. They already had their first burn. Vaporized almost 149 billion QUBIC.
Wow. So it's not just talk. They're backing it up.
Exactly. They're not messing around.
I mean, that controlled burn, it's essential if they want to grow value over time.
Right.
You know, creating that scarcity while still having a consistent emission rate. It's kind of like, what's a good analogy? A sculptor.
A sculptor. Okay.
Yeah, meticulously chipping away at a block of marble to reveal the masterpiece inside.
Okay, I see it.
But instead of a hammer and chisel, they're using fire.
That's one way to sculpt. And then, on top of all this, we've got these things called halvings.
Halvings, right.
So these are scheduled events where, boom, they cut the effective emissions in half.
In half.
But here's the catch. Each halving needs a thumbs up from the Qubic community, the quorum.
So the community has a say, like a built-in system of checks and balances.
Exactly. It's not just some behind-the-scenes algorithm making all the calls.
That adds a really interesting layer to it.
Right. They're not just chopping emissions outright.
They're doing it strategically, reducing them over time, slowly squeezing the supply.
The slow squeeze.
And the burn proportion, it actually gets bigger with each halving.
Compounding of the effect.
Makes you wonder which halving will have the biggest impact, doesn't it?
That's a good question. And then, of course, we can't forget about the supply watcher. This, AI overlords keeping an eye on everything.
Yeah, the supply watcher, it's actually pretty innovative.
Innovative? How so?
Well, it's not just sitting there, it's dynamically adjusting those burn rates.
Based on what?
All the real-time data, making sure things don't go haywire, preventing extreme deflation. Think of it like the central banker for the QUBIC economy.
The Federal Reserve of Qubic.
Exactly. It's got its finger on the pulse, keeping everything balanced.
So we've got this massive supply cut, controlled burns, these scheduled halvings, and then this AI overlord orchestrating it all. Yeah. Where does it all lead?
This is a wild ride. That's the million QUBIC question, isn't it? I mean, this is their long game. If you look at their roadmap, they're envisioning a future where emissions are basically non-existent.
Like zero.
Almost. And the burn rate, that's the dominant force. But this is a very intricate system, lots of moving parts. And remember all those figures we've been throwing around. The emissions, the burn rates, the halving schedules. They're all subject to the supply watcher's whims.
So it's constantly evolving.
Exactly. It's what makes it so exciting and also, a little unpredictable.
That's the crypto world for you. Always keeping us on our toes. But this does raise a critical question. Is this whole intricate system robust enough to handle the wild, wild west of the crypto market?
That's what I'm wondering, too. It's a great question.
Well, we'll have to dive into that in part 2. We'll crack open their roadmap and see what it all means for the future of QUBIC.
Looking forward to it.
Stick with us, deep divers.
You know, what's really interesting to me is that Qubic isn't just chasing those quick gains. They're thinking long-term.
Yeah, they're playing the long game for sure. And their roadmap, it really reflects that.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about sustainability, controlled growth.
So let's talk roadmap. What does Quebic's crystal ball say about the future of QBIC?
Well, right now we're in Epoch 123. And already, just from that initial burn rate, weekly effective emissions are down about 15%. But the first big turning point, that comes around Epoch 175.
The first halving.
Exactly. It's not just a date on the calendar, it's a trigger.
So what kind of impact are we talking about here? Give us the numbers.
All right, buckle up. With this first halving effective emissions, they plummet to about 21.25 trillion QUBIC per week.
Whoa.
Yeah, almost 29 trillion get burned, gone. And by the end of that year, the max supply shrinks down to about 175.7 trillion QUBIC.
Okay. Still a huge number, but...
Definitely. Still massive, but significantly less than where they started.
Right. It's like this slow, controlled burn,
Yeah.
gradually tightening the supply over time. I'm starting to see how this long-term strategy unfolds.
And it just keeps intensifying. If we jump ahead, say, between epochs 175 and 331, that halving process, it keeps rolling, with a bigger chunk of those weekly emissions vanishing with each cycle.
Vanishing into the crypto void.
Exactly. So by epoch 331, the effective emission, it's just a sliver of what it used to be, a mere 2.656 trillion QBAC. Right. And that max supply, it's dwindled down to around 194.3 trillion.
So we've got this shrinking max supply, these dwindling emissions. It's like this carefully orchestrated deflationary machine ticking away.
A machine powered by fire. Now, fast forward with me to Epoch 591. This is where things get really wild.
Okay, I'm ready.
At this point, the burn rate, it actually surpasses the total yearly QBIC emissions.
Wait, so the overall supply is actually decreasing?
You got it. Not just slowing down, actually shrinking. Effective emissions are basically negligible by this point, and the max supply stabilizes at around 196.8 trillion.
Wow. This is a completely different approach than most cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
They're basically turning QUBIC into a deflationary currency.
Yeah. Exactly. And that could have massive implications for its long-term value.
It could, but we do have to acknowledge that elephant in the room.
The supply washer.
Right. It's this complex AI system designed to maintain balance, keep everything running smoothly, but it also introduces this whole new set of vulnerabilities.
For sure. I mean, what if there's some kind of critical error? Or the algorithm, it misreads market signals. I've seen other burn models, they just completely implode.
It's like building a house of cards in a hurricane, isn't it?
A very delicate balancing act. And remember, this whole thing hinges on trust. Trust in the technology, trust in the team behind it.
It's a big leap of faith.
Yeah.
You know, I came across this quote from Name the Niche source that really captures this dilemma.
Oh, what did they say?
They said, and I'm paraphrasing here, the Qubic is like this high-stakes experiment, pushing the limits of what's possible with deflationary crypto.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. Because, let's be honest, they're not the only ones trying this. There have been others who've attempted similar approaches, some more successfully than others.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some, like, name a relevant crypto project, they've really struggled to maintain stability. But then you've got others, like, name another relevant crypto project that have seen some pretty impressive results.
So, Qubic isn't alone in this race to create a truly deflationary digital asset. It's a crowded field, high stakes, lots of uncertainty.
Definitely. And that brings up another crucial question. What is it about Qubic that makes it stand out? Is it just the burn and halving model, or is there something more?
That's a great point. What do you think, as our listeners, what are the key factors that will ultimately determine whether Qubic sinks or swims?
Yeah. Is it the tech, the team, the community? What's the secret sauce?
All right, so we've dug deep into Quibic's deflationary game plan. Yeah. But the big question for a lot of our listeners is probably, will this actually make me money? Will all this scarcity translate into profits for QBIC holders?
Well, you know, the age-old saying, right? High risk, high reward.
Exactly. There are never any guarantees in crypto.
Especially in crypto.
Especially in crypto, right? But for those early adopters, the ones who got in before that big supply cut,
right,
there's some serious potential upside. If demand for QUBIC keeps rising as the supply shrinks.
It all comes down to supply and demand, right?
Classic economics.
Playing out on the crypto stage and those halving events.
Yeah.
They could act like these little catalysts, you know, drumming up hype attracting new investors,
Creating buzz.
and potentially driving the price way up.
Fingers crossed. But we do have to be realistic here and talk about the potential downsides. What are the risks?
Because there are always risks.
Always risks.
Yeah.
What should investors be wary of?
Well, I mean, this is totally uncharted territory in a lot of ways. There's no guarantee that this whole
And a
approach
grand experiment.
exactly
It
is
will be.
actually going to work as they planned it. And the crypto market,
Look away.
it's volatile, it's unpredictable. External factors could totally throw a wrench in Quibic's plans.
It's like building a house of cards in a hurricane.
Pretty much. And let's not forget about our friend, the supply watcher.
Oh yeah, the AI overlord.
Right. It's a complex system. Yeah, it's meant to keep things stable, but it also creates this whole other layer of risk.
How so?
Well, what happens if there's a major error, a glitch in the matrix?
Oh.
Or what if the algorithm gets things wrong, misinterprets the market signals?
That's a lot of trust we're putting in this AI.
It is. There's a big element of trust involved, both in the tech itself and the team behind it.
Speaking of trust, I found this quote from Name a Niche Source that really sums up this whole dilemma.
Oh, yeah. What'd they say?
They said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that Qubic is basically this high-stakes experiment testing the limits of what's possible with deflationary crypto.
I like that high-stakes experiment. It's a good way to put it.
Right, because let's be real, they're not the only ones trying to crack this code. Other projects have tried similar things.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Some have crashed and burned.
Right, some have had some success.
It's a mixed bag.
It is. So Qubic is part of this bigger movement, a race to create a truly deflationary digital asset.
A race with very high stakes.
And a lot of uncertainty.
A lot of unknowns, but that's what makes it so fascinating, right?
It does. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Qubic, what do you think are the key ingredients for their success?
Yeah. What's going to make or break this project? Is it the tech, the team, the community?
Or something else entirely? What do you think?
We'd love to hear your thoughts, deep divers.
And in the meantime, keep researching, keep exploring, and as always, stay curious.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.